Thanks for being here at this session today. I'm just going to make sure my laptop's going because I have some special treats coming up for you all. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, we're going to be talking about integrating AI with purpose and a plan, and we need to explore some ethics and transparency and trust elements in there as well. So thank you for being here today. So I am Michelle Fischthal from the San Diego Community College District. And my current title, yes, is Vice Chancellor of Institutional Innovation and Effectiveness. What does that mean? We're still defining it, but we had a reorg in the district office about 2.5 years ago. So the position has been in existence for 2.5 years. I took over the institutional research department, so research and planning department. At the time, we were primarily doing compliance type reporting. Now we're doing some institutional effectiveness, strategic planning, accreditation, and then I have a line for emerging technology and innovation, and we keep trying to shift the terminology there. Originally, it was called educational technology, which was a little confusing for online education, which is a separate department who also has educational technology. So we're speaking to emerging tech. And with emerging tech comes lots of different things. A couple of other things that I do. I'm also an educational consultant and a coach for leadership and career development. Throughout my career, I've had various positions. I started in the district office in 2005 in the IT department. I call myself someone who can speak to IT folks. I was hired as a liaison to speak to the end users and the programmers. So I'm technology adjacent, but I've been involved in technology for a very long time. I've been with the district, as I said, since 2005 in various capacities. My last was actually Vice Chancellor of Instructional Services, so academic affairs is where I come from. So I'm really happy to be here. A lot of the work that I'm doing now is obviously around AI, data governance in general, and trying to eliminate some of the silos we have, so cultural change. So what are we going to do today? Our journey. I'm going to do some framing, talk a little bit about the context that we're involved in right now, lessons from the field. This is where I'm going to spend the bulk of the time talking about how we've started to integrate and implement and create a structure that will allow for AI integration. So I'll spend most of the time there where you hear some examples of how we've done things, challenges along the way, and some thoughts about the future. And then we have some planning do's and don'ts, implementation and leadership. So I know you have the presentation available to you afterwards, and I just want you to have some of that language there as well. We'll close with some reflections, both from me, but from you as well. And there'll be some interactivity. We'll end with questions, but before we get too far, I've got a Mentimeter for you. So has anyone, if you haven't been involved in Mentimeters before, this is your opportunity to either scan the QR code or go to menti.com and enter 6757-7951. I'm going to switch over to my Mentimeter now. The QR code will be there as well, so you'll be able to access it. And we're going to start by getting an idea of who is in the room. And that will help me in terms of what I'm going to speak about today. So, here we go. You should be able to now enter information on your screen. Is everyone able to do that? All right, here they come in. Student services. I think student services is going to end up winning out here. Oh, and a lot of administration, okay. I'm going to give it another second before we go on to our next question, but you'll be able to continue to access this. So we've got student services, administration, a lot of other. I'm going to assume there's some vendors and some other positions that are unique to the world of education and otherwise. All right, let's go on to the next one. So this is where you're going to identify just one word that comes to mind when you think of AI in education. What's one word? Or it could be a feeling, it could be a topic within AI. What's just one word? And here we're going to get a word cloud. Innovation, misunderstood. All right. Complex. For those of you not familiar with word clouds, the largest word is the word that most people are entering. So innovation is pretty up there right now. It's starting to come down, though. All right, future. Efficiency. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about efficiency. Innovation. Scary. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Possibilities. Transformative. Efficiency, innovation, scary, and change seem to be the largest ones there. I've got one more question for you before we get started. What concerns do you have about implementing AI technology? So now you get to put in a few more than just one word. And I know this will take a couple of minutes for us. Jobs, brain deterioration, ethics, dirty data. Yes, I'll talk about what we're doing around that as well. Too much, too fast. Absolutely. Job replacement, lack of human connection. So a big part of this conversation today is actually about human connection. Security, data, security of information, people relying on it too much. Let's see if any more. Implications for the workforce, buy-in, quality control. Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go back to my slides. All right. So let's talk a little bit. Thank you for participating, and that helps me frame this conversation, as I mentioned. So before we talk about technology, I want to start with the people, right? So I've mentioned I've been in higher education. I've been with the district for almost 20 years. I've been in higher education for a little over 20 years. One of my positions was Dean of Business and Information Technology and Online Instruction. As I mentioned, I started out in IT. I have a background in system implementations before, in ERP system implementations before I was part of higher education. So I've been in a number of different areas. But throughout all of my positions, I have been focused on innovation. And what I know more than anything else is that innovation is about change and about the people, right? Innovation is about the people. That has been the constant in all of this work. And we've heard it in a number of other presentations today. We heard it just in this room, our IT people talking about innovation or IT not being about technology, it's about the people. AI is often presented as a technical solution, right? But the impact is human. So if we think about it from an educational perspective, it's changing how our students engage, how our faculty teach, how our staff are interacting with the world and the operations around them, how our administrators are thinking and leading. It's all around us, right? It's all about the people. So whether we realize it or not, we are deep into AI, whether we want to or not as well. So that's a bit about the framing. Inherently, though, another piece of it is that this is very interdisciplinary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about silos in a moment. This is interdisciplinary from a faculty and academic perspective, but even from a not a discipline, but a departmental perspective. You know, as you're engaging, maybe you're in student services, maybe you're in marketing, we need to be talking to one another. And I'll get a little bit into the tools and how we're trying to engage with different tools as well. So, we need to have purpose when we're engaging in AI. We need to be thoughtful. We need to think about the people. And I'm going to start talking a lot about data in a moment. We need to recognize that anything and everything we do needs to be data informed. I'm going to go deep into that because that's a big part of how I've structured the work that we're doing. Okay, some context. So, the promise and pressure of AI. This is definitely a challenge. We know that there's been a push for AI, whether we're talking about academics and education, while we're talking about private industry, public industry. It's all about how do we push with AI. That's hard. That's a pressure point for us. We've heard about efficiency. We saw efficiency up in our word cloud earlier, right? Efficiency and innovation. I was reading an article, and I'm sorry I don't recall who wrote it, and I did not make sure it was really a reputable source, but I'll say it anyway. I read this article where there were some large companies who, in their planning's important, in their planning, they decided to start cutting their workforce and utilizing AI, and now they're hiring people back, right? If you haven't heard it here, if you haven't heard it before, we aren't necessarily going to be losing people because of AI. But if you want to keep your job, knowing AI is what's going to keep and get our students those jobs. And that's why it's so important from an educational perspective that we are also engaging with our students in AI literacy. And that's hard right now, but I'll talk about that as well. Inequities, biases, we saw that a little bit in the cloud as well. Silos. Our institutions are built on silos. Integrating AI in a siloed environment, we heard again from our IT folks, we can't do that. It just won't work. And so we really have to talk about that culture shift and how we start really engaging with one another and collaborating and removing some of those silos. And ultimately, AI isn't a shortcut, right? AI is not a shortcut. It's something that is here. We have to figure out how to engage with it in the best way possible for our communities, because ultimately we're here to serve our communities. All right. Shifting higher ed landscape. So this is really critical. There's a recent Gallup poll. Public trust in higher education is falling. It fell by 21% between 2015 and 2024. What was actually more staggering to me, it started at only 57% in 2015. Think about trust in education. So that's part of the landscape we're working in. And why is that? We've got cost issues, access issues. Are we delivering on employment outcomes? We're working right now with our students who have gone through COVID, who perhaps from an educational perspective, they're thinking they don't need it. I have my own child in that circumstance, right? So it's a hard environment. And not to mention the world around us and things happening at a state level, curriculum being dictated, educational mandates, the loss of autonomy for so many of our institutions. You know, I'm lucky right now to be in California, although I'll talk about some challenges there as well. But that is really staggering environment and a landscape for us to be working in. So here we are, trying to adapt something really, really big in that landscape. And it's hard. I believe I must have rushed over our slide on the human-centered aspect, so I'm just going to go back for a moment because there was something I wanted to share with you that was really important. Oh, here it is. Okay. The Human-Centered AI Institute through Stanford University. It's linked on the slides, and I've got resources in the back of these slides. Check it out. One thing that was stated there is that AI is, let me get this right, it's civilizational change. Meaning, for example, and this has been referenced before, the printing press. This is a big change. Having access to electricity, development of electricity, that's a big change. That's where we are with AI. And I went back because that is how big it is. And so we're trying to do that all within this changing landscape in higher education. So we need to recognize just how hard it is. And I know all of you who are in higher education, we persevere, we work hard, we just push through, whether it's a system implementation, whether it's a change in compliance that we need to meet, whether it's all these things happening at the same time, because they always happen at the same time, we just push through. But it's important to recognize how very big this is and allow yourself to feel it for a moment. because we're in a shifting, really shifting landscape and a tipping point around the world in general, but education in particular. Our responsibility. We must build trust, and we must have transparency. We can't do this stuff without transparency. So much of higher education was often done in that way. I came from an institution who many years ago, those of us who weren't at the executive level, maybe even those at the executive level, didn't know what was happening from a financial perspective. Now we're fully transparent because it's important people know. Okay. Think slow, act fast. So this is where I pause for a moment. Thinking slow and acting fast has really been an approach I've taken here at the San Diego Community College District. And I've got a number of resources, and I'm going to read an actual quote here. We are talking about the law of mega projects. Projects that are over budget. I see my IT colleague here laughing at it. Over budget, under-benefited, time and time again. Who in this room has gone through a project that did not take longer than you were expecting, did not cost more than you were expecting, and you didn't lose personnel in the process? Anyone? Please raise your hand because I want to talk to you. No? I mean, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about technology. And so Brent Fleevberg talks about how if we're planning up front and we're putting all of our time in up front, when we get to the implementation stage, it's faster. I'll translate to that, it's more smooth. It's smoother than if we don't do the planning. How many in this room have been involved in projects where there wasn't an official kickoff or a project plan? I know there are more hands, right? I just heard about something that we were kicking off in our district recently, and the kickoff was not a best practice kickoff. Like, we have to slow it down. And I know so many of you in the room don't have the power or the control over that. And you may even at times say, I want to slow it down. But that's a big piece of it. You'll hear some of the things that we've done in San Diego where I've been really intentional about being very slow about implementing anything, but building a structure that I can then scale. So you'll see and hear more about that. I recommend the book. It actually, my chancellor mentioned it, didn't say you need to read it, but I took a look at it and it hit me. So here we are. Here's the bulk of the presentation that I want to talk about. What have we built in San Diego? Well, multi-college district, and here I am in the district office. I came in, the position in the division is a little over 2 years old. I think I mentioned that. What I didn't mention is when I took the position, about a month later, the chancellor who reorged the entire district left. And I'm not sure there had actually been buy-in to what I was tasked to do. So, what I was tasked to do, I knew was not going to happen. It was to actually create a whole innovation center, an actual physical innovation center, and I knew that wasn't happening, so I said, what do I do next? I also don't think I mentioned that while I took over the research department, in my line of business for innovation, it was just me. Me and ChatGPT, so I did use, and I still do use ChatGPT. That was my thought partner for a while, helped me develop lots of business plans, and I have to tell you, I created lots of business plans, and then I didn't use them because it kept shifting, okay? Multi-college district. So what I did do is consider, okay, where are the gaps around emerging technology, and at that point I was thinking emerging technology, that I can fill. Because I didn't necessarily have buy-in from my presidents in the colleges, and I wanted to make sure that this division continued to exist, and so I had to be really careful about how I did that. I started off with a survey, so here's where the data comes in. I started out with an innovation survey. I mentioned I came from the academic side. At that point, I was working with a lot of career technical education programs, and I was looking at VR, AR. That's where my brain was at the time. And I started moving in that direction. I put out this survey, and one of the comments for this first survey I put out is, why did she join the VR, AR Association? We don't want anything to do with that. That's the only comment I really remember. But what I saw was I need to move in the direction of generative AI. And so that's what I did. And by using the data, everything else I did, I was able to tie to the data. So it wasn't about some agenda I had. In fact, I went into our academic senates and I talked about the division, why I was here. And the first question was always, what is your vision? Because the assumption was, this is going to be top down. You have a vision, you're going to want us to do something with it. But that wasn't the case. I actually walked in and said, I don't have a vision. I just want to figure out how to support you. And that was it. Now, while I've said that over and over again, is there anyone in this room from San Diego District? I'm not going to say anything bad. But it's very possible that person still doesn't know that this division exists. Right? That's something I'm still building on. But I'll talk about that in another moment. We have built out, so again, using the data, I had the opportunity I was attending the ASU GSV Summit that's always held in San Diego. It's a large technology, educational and technology convening, really big. Someone reached out to me. They wanted to give us some free passes, which is huge because it's a very expensive event. And I reached out to the colleges and I said, give me one person who is really interested in innovation. And one of the colleges had a faculty member. And this faculty member had already been thinking about AI literacy. He was just talking about professional development with his colleagues in his college. I was trying to move in that direction. We started ideating, and I said, one of my premises here, a little part of my vision, is I want to reduce redundancy, or at least not create redundancy. You're doing training, how about we do it together? I had a little budget, and I was able to give him a few hours a week, and we worked together, and we started developing AI literacy. A year later, I now have 2 faculty, also only equals a 0.6 load, but we've done a lot with that. And I now have 1 staff member, an innovation systems analyst, so I'm no longer just with ChatGPT, proud to announce. And we've been able to really do a lot of things, even though it's such a small team. We did an AI day in April that was very successful. I was really excited about that. We had online and in person, a little bit smaller than here, but we had over 160 participants combined. So I was really excited, got great feedback. And that was with our little team. Most important were the partnerships. I'm partnering with San Diego State University and UC San Diego. I was in a meeting with IT folks. They were talking about servers, and I was kind of listening to what they were talking about. And then the director at SDSU mentioned something about a student AI micro-credential. And I spent the rest of the meeting trying to figure out what can I say to this man for him to give it to me. And I just innocently walked up afterwards and said, any chance I can get my hands on that? And that formed our relationship. That's where it started. They're now changing the micro-credentials. There's also a faculty and staff one now. I'm hoping we can implement that in late fall or spring. We've been working, we did another survey, more data, this fall, using SDSU's survey so that we can bring our data together and start looking at some comparisons. We went out and we got a $1.5 million grant that I'm so excited about. But it's actually crossed out right now in the draft budget that's going to this governor of California, and I'll know at the end of the week if we no longer have that $1.5 million. So, move a few steps forward, a few steps back. Now what? Well, everything we're building is such that it can be scaled, or we can continue as is. So up in one of our informatics up there, it talks about an AI Institute through the American Association of Colleges and Universities. This was a program where, again, I asked for faculty from one faculty member from each college. We formed a group. We participated through the Institute for the full year, and my intent was to use that model, get money, and then expand it. We didn't get the money because this is outside the $1.5 million, it's something else. But everything that we're building basically building blocks. If we get funding, we can expand. If we don't, we can continue and figure out just how to touch more people. So that's part of that planning, that planning piece of the slow start for the fast finish. Now, we're never finishing, so it's kind of the slow to the fast, to the slow to the fast. A little bit of a dance and a rhythm there. That's what we're doing. Now, lots of lessons to be learned in what we did. Obviously, the data informed, so I think I've said it enough. Get data, because then it's not just you saying we should do this. You've got data to back you up, whether it's your data, whether it's someone else's data. Really, really helpful. Expect missteps. Resistance. So I started out working with faculty. Resistance. It's all about students and students cheating. One thing to know is the greatest fear, we saw fear in our cloud, the greatest fear of our students is being accused of cheating when they're not. And so that cultural shift is really trying to get that AI literacy out there, so that's not the only part of the conversation. And I'm really excited to say, while it still exists, one college more than others, it's shifted over the last year in terms of faculty who are now getting excited about, okay, what can I do? Now, the other piece is really important. Those resistors, you need to have a space for them too. And so we're starting to shift our conversation around how do you use AI in the classroom. We are expanding to staff now as well. How do you use it in the classroom? We're reverting and we're saying, well, let's have a conversation of, in light of AI, how can you innovate your curriculum? We always want our faculty innovating their curriculum. Again, I came from the academic side. We always want our faculty innovating their curriculum, but really needs to shift. But there's time, there's money, there's all those pieces. We don't have the funding, but I can provide the time and the space. And so my team and I, we just had our 5th planning session last Friday for next year, and we are looking at how we're going to create those spaces. And we've got a couple of models where we're going to bring people together, put them in disciplinary groups, and really start having those conversations. So a lot of missteps along the way, a lot of challenges, as you've heard, around resources, but we're making progress. We're making progress because we're doing this building block thing. Now, this AI equity grant that I'm so excited about, even if it goes away, I can farm it out. We can go for more grants, but I'm actually looking at philanthropic opportunities, because doesn't that sound good? San Diego AI Equity Alliance. Someone's got to fund that. So that's part of how we're trying to move forward. The micro-credentials we've talked about, the focus on infrastructure. Oh, guidelines, policies and guidelines. So it's been an interesting road in that area. Two of our individual colleges want to do all of the conversations in their own academic senates, develop their own policies, but here we are as a district. 2 want to collaborate, and so I've been doing this dance of just listening and seeing what's happening. We are going to move forward and talk about having an advisory group where we haven't. We've just been kind of had our fingers in each of the colleges, seeing what's going on. We've been doing our thing, but keeping connected. So now we're just collaborating more. We're connecting our professional development coordinators with the internal district staff. And that's how we're going to be moving forward without the redundancy. But the guidelines, the formal guidelines we've got, guidelines that we've talked about, but we haven't been able to officially put it out there. So those are where some of our challenges are, and I'm sure some of your own challenges as well. All right, so let me move forward. The QR code here is actually going to go to our last research that we did, our last AI survey we did. It's on the Institutional Innovation and Effectiveness website, so sdccd.edu, but this will link right to the report, and you'll have access to this later as well. I'm going to really run through these quickly because I've talked about everything here, but you've got it documented, the do's and the don'ts. Really clarify what matters most for your institution. What's your purpose, right? Student equity and trust and transparency for us. Engage everyone early. The tool-first thinking, you've got to think about that purpose. It can't be about the tool, because ultimately your culture is going to allow for that. Don't leave IT and faculty behind, alternate positive. Engage with IT and faculty, you must, right? Silos. There's a statement in change management about silos, and it's silos are where innovation goes to die, I believe is the phrase. Silos is where innovation goes to die. This has been one of the more difficult things, I would say, actually with IT. We've got someone in IT who's really excited about moving forward in certain directions, but we have to figure out how we're working together. So that's a continuous dance that we are doing. Some more do's and don'ts, and we've talked about this before. Again, think about your foundational principles, your values. Borrow and adopt from others. You heard, I just asked SDSU, hey, can I have that? You're amongst a lot of people here. Some of you have to be doing things or in similar places. Engage with folks. Ask the question, is that something I can borrow? Is that something I can see? I've been working with someone out in Dallas College. Every time we meet at a conference, we're like, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What can we do together? We're still trying to find exactly what we can do together. Learn from one another. That's the power of, really these conferences and building those relationships. Iterations, right? Pilots and iterations. You're going to move forward. You're going to build upon. If we wait and try to do some huge rollout, that's really difficult at this point. Centering the end user, AI literacy, AI literacy, AI literacy. If you're faculty, if you're staff, if you're administrators, if you have a board of directors, I'm actually going to do a presentation to our board next month. If they don't understand what AI truly is, it's really hard to move. Start with AI literacy. We talked about the don'ts. Don't expect a linear path. Systems follow culture. If you're having challenges engaging with one another, in other implementations, you're going to have the same problem here. So really have to fix the foundational aspects. All right, leadership. Talked a bit about leadership focusing on collaboration, understanding the goals and the foundations. This isn't about a tech implementation, right? This is going back to the humans. This is all about the humans. And I shared my story about managing emotions, and in particular our students. But certainly faculty, staff, and administrators, the same things. We saw it up here, the fear. And then there are people who are really excited. So my team is often called the rah-rah team. It's like, that's not what we're all about. It's not just about the rah-rah, right? Which is why I'm being very explicit in having opportunities for people who aren't rah-rah and even negative rah-rah, a space for them as well. You've got to do both. So with that, these are closing reflections. It's all what we've talked about. Sometimes you have to pause. You need to ask questions. You need to make a commitment, obviously, to your community. But I want to get interactive again and also give you an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to ask you for one thing to stop and one thing to start doing, and I'm going to move us back to the Mentimeter. Hang on, because I do need to log in to get there. So if we can switch me over to the Mentimeter. Enter one thing you're going to stop doing. And maybe let's put it this, one thing you want to stop doing and one thing you want to start doing. So one thing you want to stop doing or start doing around AI. And we'll leave it for a few seconds. Procrastinating. Overthinking. Start small. Nice. Stop worrying. Start implementing. New skills. Stop waiting for the perfect plan, but start building frameworks. Nice. Very nice. Start questioning. You'll have access to this. You can all see this, right? Can you all see this? Okay. Great. I think we have, I'm at 4, probably? Okay. Okay, let's get to questions.
Well, maybe, yes, for Dr. Fischthal. Also, I don't know if anybody can see her shoes, but these shoes are killer, and I have just been staring at them the whole presentation. I love them. But yes, opening up the floor for questions. Any questions that y'all have? Oh, yeah, go, yes. I can bring the mic over.
And thank you, first of all. This was fantastic, really, really thought-provoking. As far as the ethics, that's part of what drew me to the presentation. Can you give an example of an ethical quandary or?
So we've very much been talking about ethics, rather. Let me just get us to the last screen. So that's a really big part of literacy, and we've actually asked, here's some contact information. The bottom one will get you to the San Diego Community College District, and to my division website where we have lots of recordings with our literacy presentations, along with ethics presentations. So what we've recognized is we really need to be talking about it and bulking it up in the literacy conversation, so we now have a presentation explicitly about ethics. But we're also, in working with San Diego State, we're pushing them to up the ethics conversations for our students and our faculty as well. So ethics can go anywhere from the sustainability pieces of it. I'll just bring up the word because someone else would. The sustainability of when do you even use AI? Well, if you can use a Google search, well, it used to be if you use a Google search, then you're not using all the operations of the AI generator, but now the Google search uses AI, so I don't know what to tell you about that anymore. But the ethical component of recognizing the biases, recognizing, particularly in community colleges, and when we're talking about what kind of tools we should have for our folks, that if we're not providing the tools, not all of our students are going to be able to use them. And then we're creating inequities. Biases, with all the data that comes forth. I mean, that's a big piece. I didn't get to talk about the fact that we haven't really made a district-wide implementation of one particular tool because we're still waiting it out and actually working with our state office to see if they'll pay for something. But we're really been hesitant to put something out there. Ethical just in terms of people are starting to use certain tools, and can we support it? And do we want to support it? So part of it is creating those guidelines of what do we want it from an institutional perspective to be as well. So there's so much to think about. I mean, there's just so much to think about. That's where we go back to this is so big. And I'm lucky in that we have this office who could at least push our executive team to recognize we need to be thinking about these things. But not everyone has that. And so it's, how can you use your role, whether it's a formal leadership role, an informal leadership role, to talk about these things? Be bold, bring them up, take on your informal leadership if you don't have a title in front of your name. It really can go a long way. I hope, okay.
Great question. Yeah, we've got time for one more. It might take me longer to get there than, get my steps in.
Just piggybacking off of the ethics question, one of the big things that I can foresee our small institution having trouble with is the integration between 3 different systems, Element, our LMS, and then our infrastructure for colleague. One of the big concerns, and one thing that I thought was really cool, was the ability for them to be able to ask the questions and have the agents be able to pull information from these systems. However, I can see some ethical concerns with that our IT team especially will have security-wise with that information being able to come in and out so easily. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, another reason why we've slowed down, I didn't speak to this, but we're actually working on implementing an enterprise database warehouse so that we are going through the process of ensuring we have quality data to start, so I'll just leave that over here. The other piece is that's it. How do we evaluate to really ensure the safety and the privacy? And that's why we haven't taken on something big yet. So you just talked about like 5 or 6 different systems. Are they integrated now, right? And how are you using the data now? Another piece that I just implemented, it's been 9 months now, we have a data governance manager. I think we're the first in the California system to actually have a data governance manager because we need someone focused on exactly what you're talking about. And I couldn't do it from my side. My researchers can't do it. There's no global division to be doing that work. So very often data governance managers are in the IT department. I asked for it to be in my department. Not so much about control, but because my department has the tentacles now to everywhere, and that's what I'm trying to create. So I'm not sure if I'm completely answering your questions, but there are so many pieces to that. The oversight piece in general and who has that oversight and what's that collaboration look like is a big part of it. It's hard. It's a hard piece.
Collaboration is key. I think we've all learned that. Thank you so much, Dr. Fischthal.
Thank you
Thank you,
being here.
everybody, for participating.